There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
All right. Open up the door. Starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates, and prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind him. He looked, he turned around, and said, I saw a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice, which was like a trumpet, speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us. The things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass. Those things which must take place. Those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about. Discerning the times and the signs, discussing the issue of the day from a biblical perspective and world view. Andy White here. What you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. Thanks for joining in for a brand new live edition of Open Up the Doors here on Faith FM. If you are tuning in, I am streaming live on my Open Up the Doors Facebook page at facebook.com/FaithFM 91.7. That's facebook.com/FaithFM 91.7. I am streaming live on Facebook. So go on over to the Open Up the Doors Facebook page. If you've never liked the page, please like the page and join in the conversation there. There are some people there just logging in right now on Facebook Live. Hi, guys. I appreciate you all. We got listeners from all across the fruited plains, and I always stand in awe of that, and I always thank God for it. We are streaming live over the internet. If you are outside of the Faith FM broadcast area, you can listen to the broadcast at HamptonsChristian.com. That's www.HamptonsChristian.com. If you want to hear the broadcast and you're not near a radio, you can listen to it. You can live stream it as well on the internet. And the best way, honestly, is to get the Faith FM app, to download that app for your Android, for your Apple devices. Anyway, I want to get to it because, as always, I've got so much to share, and I almost don't know where to begin because it's like, whoa, But, man, stuff is going on, folks. It's just we've been, in the past months, in the past several months of broadcasts, I've talked about things like, I've asked questions, I've done broadcasts on things like, what are the Saudis up to, and what is Turkey up to, and what is Iran, that would be the Persians, what are they up to? But now today, I've been doing a lot of reading the last few days, looking into some things, and it's time to ask, what are the Chinese up to? We've talked about the Saudis, we've talked about Turkey, we've talked about Persia, but we need to start talking about the Chinese, because quite honestly, folks, by almost all expert accounts, the Chinese are becoming, if they haven't already, America's greatest existential threat. And if you thought the world was becoming freer, with liberty abounding through benevolent governments and benevolent leaders, you couldn't be more hopelessly wrong. Because what we've been seeing more and more of in recent years, and this kind of just hit me the other day as I was pondering this, but we've been seeing more and more in recent years is the rise of the strong man. Putin, Erdogan, Ayatollah Khamenei, and now Xi Jinping, the president of China. And of course, the ultimate last strongman to come, as we well know, those of us who are familiar with the Word of God, the ultimate last strong man to come will be the son of perdition, the Antichrist, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. But all these strong men are rising up in the world today, and I was pondering this the other day. And what is it? What is it that they all have in common? They're all major players in the eschatological landscape. There is an eschatological prophetic positioning occurring in the world right now, as you've heard me say time and time again. And as I so often mention, all the pieces on the chessboard are coming into their prophetic alignment. Before I get into some of the things I want to share about China, before I get into some of the current issues that I want to discuss, I just want to briefly set out the biblical and the prophetic framework from which I am seeing this from in regards to China. You know, the Bible talks about the kings of the east. Over in Revelation 16:12, it says this: Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. Now, I understand and I recognize there's a lot of different schools of thought about who the kings of the east might be. Some believe it's simply a reference to the Babylonians, the ancient Babylonians, the Persians. Some would hold that it's all the Stan countries that are north and east of Persia. You got Pakistan and Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan. Some believe it's those kingdoms, and there's some possibility that they're included. But I hold, and I'm going to get into it in a moment, I hold that the kings of the east ultimately really is China. It says this as well in Revelation. Now, we just read in Revelation 16 that the way of the kings of the east would be prepared. And I believe that's happening even in our day as I speak. But in Revelation chapter 9, verses 13 and 16, again we see the sixth angel. The angel with the trumpet says, the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, release the four angels who were bound at the great river Euphrates. So the four angels who had been prepared for the hour and the day and the month and the year were released to kill a third of mankind. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. You know what's interesting about this verse, especially when you correlate it to Revelation 16? You see that the sixth angel has a specific assignment. In Revelation 9, the sixth angel sounds the trumpet, and he's told to release the four angels that are holding back this massive 200 million man army who's going to go forth and kill 1/3 of mankind. That's a Selah moment right there. Right now, the population of the planet is roughly, I think, approaching 7 billion. Let's say it's 6.5 billion. That would mean that 2 billion people are going to be killed in this exchange. And the angel that in Revelation 9 that releases these four angels, that releases this army, is the sixth angel who pours out the bowl of wrath, the bowls of woe in Revelation 16, to draw out the kings from the east. Now, like I said a moment ago, a lot of people have a lot of different perspectives and interpretations of what this means, and I understand that. But I have a reason for believing it is a sublime reference to China, because the number is very specific. I heard the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. Usually when the Bible speaks of a large multitude of people of many different nations, it'll say a multitude of people. It'll say, I saw many peoples. I saw a multitude of people. Here it's a very specific number, 200 million. And the only entity in the entire world that could muster an army of 200 million is China, with a population of over 1.9 or 1.2 billion, over a billion people in China. And right now, I looked this up, as a matter of fact, just last night. I was curious to see what the People's Liberation Army's current standing is. Is it anywhere near 200 million? And right now, it's not. It's still one of the largest armies in the world, but right now they have a standing army of 3 million in the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, right now is at 3 million. But China could jump to an army of 200 million at the drop of a dime because they've got that many people. And there's another scripture I want to bring into framing this narrative of where I'm going with this, because I see these prophetic movements happening. In Daniel, we read about the military campaign of the king of the north, who is the Antichrist, throughout Daniel 11. And there's one particular verse in Daniel 11:44 that I believe plays into this. When the Antichrist, the king of the north, is engaging with the king of the south, who is Egypt, the king of the north invades Egypt and conquers Egypt. Egypt never submits to the Magog Confederacy. If you look in Ezekiel 38:39, Egypt is conspicuously not in that list. To this day, Egypt and Turkey don't have particularly good relations. That's just an aside. But in Daniel 11, you see how the king of the north, the Antichrist, goes down and invades the king of the south, Egypt. But then in verse 44, it says this: "But news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many." The scenario there is that the Antichrist is engaged in this battle, in this war, in this conflict with Egypt. But now he's hearing news from his northern border and his eastern border. Could that news, hear me out, folks, could that news from the east and the north possibly be China and Russia? In July of 2017, Chinese warships conducted live-fire drills in the Mediterranean while on their way to take part, this was only a year ago, to take part in joint naval exercises with Russia off the coast of St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad. There is no secret, folks. There is no secret whatsoever that there is a growing military cooperation between Beijing and Moscow. A new edition of the Pentagon's annual report on China just came out recently. I was perusing through what was reported regarding it in several different reports. But this new Pentagon report on China documents the major advances in a number of areas where China's military is aggressively preparing for war against the United States and its allies. China has increased their military capabilities beyond the imagination. Xi Jinping has put forth a program to be number one in the world when it comes to AI military technology. They've developed hypersonic missiles that they claim, God forbid we ever find out, but we may. But they claim that these hypersonic missiles, nothing can take them down because they're traveling too fast, and they can take out a carrier fleet. They could take out a carrier. And the Pentagon is recognizing this. The Pentagon has been going up, officials from the Pentagon have been going up to Congress to report about the very real existential threat that China is now posing to the United States. Far more of a threat than Russia, believe it or not. We're always concerned about Russia. But yet Russia's economy is weak. Russia's military is still, as powerful as it is, it's still actually much smaller than ours. Yeah, they have a whole lot of nuclear bombs, and Russia just developed a new atomic bomb that is dubbed the Satan II missile, and correctly so. Russia has a bomb that they claim could take out an area the size of France, an area the size of Texas. But outside of that, their regular army is much smaller than ours. The real issue is China. Again, China has been developing, according to the newest released Pentagon report, China has been developing numerous ICBMs that have no military purpose other than to target American cities, American bases, and American aircraft carriers, as I just said. According to the Pentagon report, quote, the PLA that's the People's Liberation Army, has long been developing airstrike capabilities to engage targets as far away from China as possible. Over the last 3 years, the PLA has rapidly expanded its overwater bomber operating areas, gaining experience in critical maritime regions and likely training for strikes against U.S. and allied targets. Moving right along, because I'm going somewhere with all of this, because the kings of the East are preparing the way. According to a report this past week in the Gatestone Institute, China is reportedly going to build a railway, here we go, a railway through Iran and Turkey into Syria. When I saw that headline, my attention was arrested. I said, what? There you go. Bind up those 4 angels at the Euphrates. I don't know what those 4 angels are. I don't even know where they're located. The scripture just says bind up. Release, not bind up, release the angels that have been bound up. I had it backwards. Release the angels that have been bound up, that the way of the kings of the East might be prepared. And then you read something like this, that China is building a railway through Iran and Turkey into Syria. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that some say that the kings of the East could include those, Stan countries like Pakistan and all those Stan countries. I can't think of Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan. Well, between China and Iran is where they all are. And they're all Muslim nations, by the way. But it goes on. Not only is China building this railway through Iran and Turkey to get into Syria. Now, why would China want to even be there? What does that have to do? What does that area of the world have anything to do with what would be interesting to China? Other than the fact that they have made strong alliances with Russia and Iran. But on top of that, this article in Gatestone went on to say that COSCO, the China Ocean Shipping Company Group, not Costco, ladies, not Costco, but COSCO, the China Ocean Shipping Group Company. They just recently purchased a controlling stake in the port of Piraeus near Athens in Greece. They just bought one of the biggest and busiest ports in Greece. The busiest container port in the Eastern Mediterranean is now owned by the Chinese. The bottom line of all this, that everyone, that all these experts in the Pentagon is saying, is that China's increasingly apparent plan is for regional and global hegemony. China's president Xi Jinping has gone to great lengths to promote this, what he's calling the Belt and Road Initiative. That's building these trains, building this railway system through the Mideast into Syria, buying up these ports for Chinese, to build up this Chinese economy. Now, you got to understand something. This is all connected with the tariffs and the sanctions, that this trade war that's going on right now. I'll have to get into that in a little bit. But I'm laying out the foundation here for the kings of the East to show you what's going on. Like I said, we've been paying so much attention to Russia and to Turkey and to Iran, we've almost forgotten about another player. Another player in the eschatological landscape is China, a big player. But Xi Jinping has been seeking to build these relationships with other parts of Asia and Europe and Africa. And yes, I'll say it again. The way of the kings of the East is being prepared, it seems to me. President Xi Jinping has become China's most powerful leader since Mao Zedong. This past April, which was very curious to me, because this past April, China's parliament voted to end presidential term limits, making Chinese President Xi, he has the right to remain in office indefinitely. It follows this pattern that all these strong men have been taking Because what caught my attention when I read that was it was just last year in April that the Turkish parliament did the same exact thing for Erdogan. They changed their constitution so that Erdogan could run again for the presidency and have more presidential powers. And now this past April, a couple of months ago, the same thing happened in China with the Chinese parliament to give President Xi a tightening grip on his power. Xi's name, this is how powerful he's become in China. His name was recently added to China's constitution. The first time a living leader's name has been added since Chairman Mao. The political ideologies of China's presidents have usually been added to the country's constitutions, their ideologies, but not their names. Now only Chairman Mao and now Xi have been named in the very title of those policies and theories within the Constitution. The Chinese amendment was called, the amendment to their Constitution was called Xi Jinping's Thoughts on Socialism with Chinese Characteristics for a New Era. And boy, I could probably do a broadcast just on that alone, because what Xi Jinping is doing is taking that Marxist socialism, but transforming it into a Chinese nationalism, transforming it, taking the principles of communism, taking the principles of Mao, taking the principles of Marxist communism and Maoism, and updating it, and upgrading it for a modern China. Is basically what has been put into their constitution. And this amendment was approved by all 2,300 delegates attending this Congress. So now Chairman Xi, now I know he's called President Xi, but it's pretty much Chairman Mao. This is the Communist Party, folks. But Xi is now considered the most important party leader alive, of course, above former presidents and his eventual successor. I even read in one report that some of the Chinese Hindus, some of the Chinese Buddhists are actually beginning to worship Xi as a living god, as a Bodhisattva. I bet you thought Bodhisattva was just an old Steely Dan song. But Bodhisattva is a holy man in the Hindu religion who's almost a deity. And there are some Chinese Hindus who are beginning to worship Xi like that, like the Tibetans worship the Dalai Lama as a god as well, as deity as well. That's a little bit of a side. But here's the point of all this. It's the ascendance of Chairman Xi. And Xi has been cracking down as well on Christianity, has been cracking down on the church in China, something I'm going to get to later on in the broadcast. But he's like Erdogan, like Putin. He's becoming a tyrannical powermonger, a strong man. This guy named Willie Lam, who's a Chinese politics expert at the Chinese University in Hong Kong, said this about President Xi. Quote, Xi is a closet Maoist. Well, I don't know how much he's in the closet, actually. But this is what a Chinese political expert is saying about Xi. Xi is a closet Maoist. He is very anxious about thought control. He definitely does not want people to be faithful members of the church, because then people would profess their allegiance to the church rather than to the Communist Party, or more exactly, to Xi himself. Isn't it amazing? You've got Erdogan cracking down on Christianity. You've got Xi cracking down on Christianity. You've got Putin cracking down on Christianity. Now, I know some people think he's not, but he is. He's elevated in Russia. He's elevated the Orthodox Church as the state church, but all Protestant born-again groups, Putin has been cracking down on. Again, I don't want to digress too much. But the spirit of Antichrist that is so prevalent and evident in all of these strong men, isn't it amazing, my friends? Is it amazing? Is it not amazing? That one thing, the one thing that all these despots and tyrants and dictators have in common is their hatred of the true God and their fear of the cross, because there's power in the cross. Stick around. I'll be back with more after this. Gonna take a short little Selah break. my God, could it be? Yes, yes, my friends, when you hear the sound of the carnival carousel, when you hear the cranking of the melodious circus barrel organ, then that can only mean one thing. It's time for a Theater of the Absurd news update. Real news stories that would make the Carnival Freak Show jealous with envy. So step right up and give an ear. Step right up. Come one, come all. It is a Theater of the Absurd update. Theater of the Absurd updates are brought to you by 8 Clowns and a Mini Cooper, LLC, and heard only on Open Up the Doors. All right, folks. Yes, it's been a long time. It's been a while since I've done a Theater of the Absurd update. But as I was doing all this different research and backstory for today's broadcast, I came upon something that I was not aware of. Perhaps you aren't aware of either. And it has to do with Chairman Xi Jinping. You know, before I share what I want to share about that, being an egotistical, maniacal despot must really be a burden. I mean, it's got to be really draining to take yourself so seriously that you can't even poke fun at yourself. That's right, folks. In the midst of some serious stuff that I'm talking about, even in the midst of some sobering situations, we're going to have a little fun right now. We're going to have a little mirth right now because a merry heart does good like medicine. And this was just a bit too sweet to ignore. To be able to poke fun at an atheistic, communist strongman who's afraid of Winnie the Pooh. That's right. Have you heard about this? Who's afraid of the big bad? No. Who's afraid of Winnie the Pooh? Well, the Chinese government, apparently. Because it has been reported. Actually, it was reported a couple of weeks ago, but I hadn't heard about this. But that China has banned Winnie the Pooh. In fact, there's a new Winnie the Pooh film out, a new movie out called, what's the name of that movie? Christopher Robin, who's, you know, the little kid in Winnie the Pooh. But China bans Winnie the Pooh film after comparisons to President Xi. Memes likening Xi to the portly Pooh Bear have become a vehicle in China to mock the country's leader. China's film authorities have now denied a release to Disney's new Winnie the Pooh film, Christopher Robin, as I just said. Why? Because again, Chinese President Xi, he looks too much like Winnie the Pooh. I gotta show you some of these memes. I know it's hard over the radio. For those of you on Facebook, I gotta show you some of these because these memes were so offensive. These memes were so seditious that Winnie the Pooh has to be banned, and they've been censoring these memes. And any mentions, if you mention Winnie the Pooh in any email in China, you will be visited by the Pooh police. I'm not making this up. Memes and GIFs of Winnie the Pooh have been deleted off China's instant messaging app, WeChat. And trying to compose a message mentioning the eminently dangerous, seditious Pooh Bear will grant you an error message and perhaps a visit from the Pooh police. But these memes are funny. Now, I know you can't see these memes for those of you who are listening on the radio. I'm going to try and get these pictures up on the Open Up the Doors Facebook page right now. But one of them that's really funny, I'm going to show the Open Up the Doors Facebook Live audience. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. But one of these memes, this was one of the first ones that came out. It's a picture of President Xi and former President Barack Obama walking side by side. Next to the real picture is a picture of Tigger and Winnie the Pooh. And the suggestion has been, according to the meme, of course, that President Obama was Tigger and President Xi was Winnie the Pooh. And another one, I'm going to just have some fun here with the folks on Facebook Live. This is great. There's another picture. I'll try and describe it for those of you who can't see the pictures right now. But there's another picture of when President Xi was viewing a military parade. There's a picture of Xi popping up out of his limousine to wave to the armed forces, to wave to the crowd. You know how these leaders pop up out of the middle of their car through the sky window of their car. But right next to the real picture is a picture of Winnie the Pooh popping up out of a little plastic car. And of course, these pictures are so demeaning. These pictures are so insulting. But here's the cutest one of all. I think this one is really, really kind of cute. Again, for those of you on Facebook Live, I hope you can see them. I'm holding them up to the camera for those of you who are on over there. But this picture is just too cute. It really is. I don't understand how and I just can't think like that. But here's the cute one. It is a portrait of President Xi next to his long lost twin brother Winnie the Pooh. And look, the Pooh Bear is in Chinese colors, a red shirt and a yellow star. I know. This is what dictators, this is the kind of stuff dictators are made out of. Again, for those of you, I know it's not fair, those of you who are listening over the airwaves or over the internet, and you're not on Facebook Live, you haven't seen these pictures, I will post them on the Open Up the Doors Facebook page later today, because it's just too sweet. I don't get it. Seriously, how is it that these so-called strongman dictators are so thin-skinned? I mean, what an amazing paradox. You have an ego so large that it crumbles in weakness over being compared to Winnie the Pooh? What a dichotomy. A manifestly deep insecurity coexisting with a huge ego. What could be more dichotomous than that? But again, alas, that is the stuff tyrants and despots are made of. I just thought we'd have a little fun with that, because I haven't done a theater of the absurd in a while. But there is some related news, believe it or not. There is some related. You would say, what could be related to that? Well, just yesterday, God is so good. When I'm putting this broadcast, I got to tell you, folks, when I'm putting this broadcast together, God is so good. Because usually on a Sunday or Monday, I have no idea what I'm going to be speaking about on Thursday. And sometimes I start banging my head up against the wall. God, what do you want me to share on Thursday? What do you want me to share? And then if I don't have something by Tuesday night, I'm really getting nervous. But I started to do the background for this broadcast on Tuesday. And I came across that Winnie the Pooh story on Tuesday. But then just yesterday, last night, when I was kind of putting all my pieces of notes together, I came across what the AP, the Associated Press, was just reporting yesterday. Headline, Image-Conscious China appoints new global propaganda czar. I mean, I looked at that and said, oh, thank you, God. Oh, thank you, Jesus. How can I transition? How could I possibly transition from Winnie the Pooh being banned in China? How do I transition into anything out of that? And then I get a news report from the AP. Image-conscious China. You think? You think they're image-conscious? But they've appointed, to get to the story, they've appointed a new global propaganda czar. No, the new propaganda czar isn't Winnie the Pooh. It's Tigger. No, I'm only kidding. You can't make this stuff up. Oh, my God. Anyway, let me read something out of the article. Check China's increasingly image-conscious government. You think? You think they are increasingly image-conscious? But their increasingly image-conscious government has appointed a trusted member. That in itself is an oxymoron. A trusted member of the Communist Party. Can you trust a communist? I mean, that's like a totally oxymoronic statement. A trusted member. Well, I guess for other communists, I don't know. But I'm digressing too much. But they've appointed a trusted member of the ruling Communist Party to head up its international propaganda operation. Former top internet regulator. Oh, here we go. And he was the guy that was banning and regulating Winnie the Pooh, I bet. I don't know that, but why not? All this stuff goes together. Former top internet regulator Zhu Lin will be in charge of efforts to portray China as a progressive force for good in the world. at a time when it's facing criticism over its allegedly unfair trading practices, human rights abuses, and militarization of island claims in the South China Sea. You think? You think? Hey, we're China. We're a force for good. We just don't like Winnie the Pooh. But we're a force for good. This is the essence of propaganda. But Zhu's appointment to the position of head of the cabinet level State Control Information Office was announced by state media outlets this past Tuesday. Speaking at a two-day meeting attended by officials from major state media outlets and the internet regulator, President Xi said, listen to this statement. I mean, it's not even like they're hiding it. Xi said this, quote, Xi said propaganda efforts needed to be put front and center. The official Xinyu news agency said, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. That's the Chinese news agency, Xinyu or ZU. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not Chinese, but their news agency. Xi is saying we've got to make propaganda front and center, especially I guess after you've just banned Winnie the Pooh. You got to do something to save face, I guess. I don't know. But here's the deal. Since Donald Trump took office in 2017, Beijing has sought to draw a contrast with the Trump administration by emphasizing China's role in promoting free trade, because now President Trump is being touted as a protectionist with the trade wars and the tariffs. That's playing into this, my friends. All the stuff's connected. All the stuff is connected. But Xi has been trying to promote China as a bastion of free trade and addressing global issues such as climate change since we pulled out of the Paris Accords. Critics say, of course, that this actually contradicts China's role as the most restricted major economy and a leading polluter. But that's exactly what propaganda is for. Ah, yes, as I've been saying time and time again, when the truth cannot be told or tolerated, you pump out the propaganda. The truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. Folks, a demagogue is someone who says things he knows to be untrue to a room full of people he believes to be imbeciles. It's been the foundation for propagandists since the 1930s. But the most brilliant propagandist technique will yield no success unless one fundamental principle is borne in mind constantly and with unflagging attention. It must confine itself to a few points and repeat them over and over. China is good. China is a force for good in the world. China, we believe in global warming. We believe in free trade. Oh, isn't President Trump just terrible with these tariffs, with this trade war? Just keep saying the lie over and over and over again. Because if you tell the lie big enough, as we well know, and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. But thank God, my friends, that we are a voice of truth because of the Word of God. And we are ambassadors for the truth. And that is what this broadcast is all about. The fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Napeague, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. And thanks for joining in, everyone, all across the fruited plain. If you're just joining in, I am streaming live on my Open Up the Doors Facebook page at facebook.com/faithfm 91.7. There are some folks over there who are saying hi, who are jumping in and joining in the conversation. Please do that. Please, for those of you on Facebook Live, share this into your streams. And if you never liked the Open Up the Doors Facebook page, please like it. You could also email me at ajwhite777 at icloud.com if you'd like to correspond with me about the things I've been sharing. Anyway, let me move on with the broadcast here, because I am running out of time, as I always do. There is something else I wanted to share about what's going on in China. That's sobering and very serious, because the Daily Mail, which is a British newspaper is reporting again this past week that China has been demolishing and has demolished hundreds of churches in recent months, weeks, last couple of years, but it's progressing worse and worse. China is confiscating Bibles during a crackdown. They're really cracking down on Christianity, and specifically in one province called Henan. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's spelled Henan, Henan. But this is a predominantly Christian area, and the Chinese government has been cracking down. Residents were asked to replace posters. This is what they did in Nazi Germany. But residents were asked to replace posters of the cross and pictures of Jesus Christ with portraits of President Xi Jinping. Take down the cross and put up Mao. Well, the modern day Mao is now Xi Jinping. You know, back in Nazi Germany, they took the crosses down and they put the swastikas up in the churches there. They took the pictures of Jesus down and put up the pictures of Adolf Hitler. They're doing that in China now with President Xi. Those who watch these things, UN observers, human rights observers, say that the Chinese government right now is waging the most severe systematic suppression of Christianity since 1982. I think that was about the time of the Tiananmen Square, sometime around there. Rebellion. But obviously concerns are being raised over China's crackdown on Christianity as the ruling Communist Party continues to intensify its control over religious freedom in the country. Churches have been raided and demolished, as I said. Bibles are being confiscated, and new laws are being established to monitor religious activity in the country's province of Henan, which has, as I said, one of the largest Christian populations in China. See, this war on the saints is an ongoing reality in much of the world. There is a war on the saints that I've talked about time and time again on this broadcast. Under President Jinping, again, China's most powerful leader since Mao, believers are seeing their freedom shrink dramatically, even as the country undergoes a religious revival. I read that in this report. Again, it arrested my attention. Let me say that again. This is under the report out of the Daily Mail. Under President Xi Jinping, believers are seeing their freedom shrink dramatically, even as the country undergoes a religious revival. Isn't that the paradox of history, my friends? The church has always grown and flourished the most when under persecution and duress. We've never seen real persecution and duress in the United States of America. I believe we will. I believe that day is coming. We think because we've been so blessed in this country that if we have just the right government and whatnot, the right elections, that Christianity will flourish. But the exact opposite happens. And history has borne that out time and time and time again. And over the last several months in China, the local governments have shut down hundreds of private Christian church houses. The people are scared. The people are frightened. But more people are being won to Jesus. Just like it was like that in the early church, it's been like that throughout history. The church has been built on the blood of the martyrs. There was a story about this one guy, this old Chinese shopkeeper named Guao. He waited, it says here, he waited his entire adult life to see his dream. He wanted to build a church, and he finally built a church, a brick house with a sunny courtyard and spacious hall, and he had 200 believers coming to his house church. But in March, this past March, about a dozen police officers and local officials suddenly showed up at the church on his property and made the frightened congregation disperse. Again, they ordered that the cross and a painting of the Last Supper and a Bible verse be taken down. And they demanded that all services stop until each person, along with the church itself, was registered with the government. Without warning, Gao and his neighbors in Central Henan had found themselves on the front lines of an ambitious new effort by the officially atheist ruling Communist Party to dictate and in some places to displace the practice of faith in their country. This has been going on for some time and it's increasing. Last November, Christian residents of a rural township in southeast province Jinghe were persuaded to replace posters of the cross and Jesus inside their homes with portraits of Qi. Not just inside a public place, but now they're being forced in their homes. If you're marked as a Christian, you got to take down your Christian pictures. You got to take down your Christian paraphernalia and put up the portraits of Chairman Qi. You know, the guy that looks like Winnie the Pooh? This was really alarming, and I'm running out of time. I don't know if I'm going to get to this. But this article went on to say that in this one community, quote, the local leadership there said, through our thought reform, they've voluntarily done it. In other words, the communist leaders are saying, oh, the people are voluntarily taking down the pictures of Jesus now and putting up pictures of Chairman Qi. Through our thought reform. A promised utopia, my friends. The communists have always promised a promised utopia. In reality, it always ends up a dystopian nightmare. Marxist socialism, communism, always promises a utopian society, but never once has it ever delivered on its promises, and it can't, and it never will be able to deliver on those promises because it's built on a false foundation of economic sand and atheistic godlessness. Churchill once said that socialism is the philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. And I can get into a whole thing on socialism, but I can't because I'm running out of time. But President Xi Jinping has called for absolute loyalty from the military just this past week in a military parade. He met, not a parade, he met with the leaders, the generals, the leaders of the People's Liberation Army, and he demanded absolute loyalty from the military to the party, to the Communist Party, and to him, because he is the head of the Communist Party. Xi said, we must cast the ideological foundation of the army's absolute loyalty to the party. China is becoming a very, very serious threat, my friends, and we need to keep our eyes on them. What will happen, only time will tell, of course. But as a watchman on the wall, we have to stay alert. And we watch what's coming on the horizon. But I've got to go. My time's run out. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Those of you on Facebook Live, please share this into your streams and come back again next week to another edition of Open Up the Doors. And keep it right here on Faith FM because there is still 24/7 of awesome and great Christian programming coming up. God bless you, everybody. I'll see you next week.